So first things first, thank you all for joining on. I really appreciate your time. Obviously, not everybody's going to be here during the first session because we're doing this for 2 hours, but I think this is going to be really informative. I really put a lot of thought into how to structure this, so it's going to be helpful. Obviously, this is on how to predictably find clients and recruits. One thing that I want to touch on first, and I wasn't planning on saying this, but a lot of the time when people do outreach, they think, and I'm talking financial representatives, different financial advisors, they think it's this completely different process for finding clients versus finding recruits. Obviously, what you're saying is different, but at the end of the day, you need to reach out to people. You need to be curious about them. And so a lot of the process is similar. So that's why we're touching on both clients and recruits in the same presentation. They could be separate presentations, but maybe that's for another time. All right, so what we're covering today is we're going to give an quick intro on me and Reply Assist, dispelling some myths, especially about LinkedIn outreach, why use LinkedIn for growth, how to use it effectively, how to not sound like every other advisor doing outreach, because a lot of people have a problem with that, making sure to be compliant with your outreach, the best days and times of days to do outreach, why manual outreach is not worth your time, and now that you know what to do, looking at a risk-free offer that we have, as well as Q&A sessions at the end. And again, just to recap, we're going through this for the first hour as well as the second hour. So if you're attending both, you're going to hear the information twice. I'm sure there's going to be little variations from 1 hour versus the other. First things first, like I said to you, Melanie, please make sure to take notes. We're going to be covering a lot of stuff. I don't know if I'm going to be sending out the recording or not, so just make sure to write things down. And if I'm talking fast, I'll try to peek in here and there, but like even right now, I'm messing around with the screen. I can't see the chat. And so if you have feedback, please just save it for the Q&A session at the end. And then if you want to book a call, I'm pretty sure that I already sent this in the chat. So you can book a call that way. All right, so as an introduction, a little bit about me before Reply Assist is a fun fact. I wasn't planning on throwing this one in there, but I figured it'd help. I actually played football at a community college. I walked on and actually earned a scholarship. So that just shows tenacity and just my athletic background. I love sports, I really do. Hence like Andrew, as I was showing my Iowa Hawkeye mug, we actually got a new head coach yesterday, or a couple days ago. But I was a licensed investment advisor representative. You can see the licenses that I had. And by the way, actually, I didn't even think to make the introduction, but I'm going to talk about Brian Collins, who's also here in a second. He's supposed to be there, so sorry for not mentioning that sooner. Brian is with the securities guys. We'll touch on that later. So if you're wondering why he's there, he'll be brought up later on in the presentation. So I've been working for myself for about 7 years now. I sold my last business back in February 2023. If you have any questions about that, let me know. And then I personally sent over 42,000 invites on LinkedIn. So I don't like to say I'm an expert. I don't like when people use that claim, but if I have any area of expertise, it's LinkedIn outreach. I've just done the reps. So about Reply Assist, it's LinkedIn lead generation software to make it easier to find new recruits and new clients, automating a lot of your outreach, taking a lot of that work off your plate. Work with financial advisors just because we want to be able to provide relevant support. If we're working with a whole different industries, a whole bunch of job titles, it's tough to actually know how to help you out. We're approved by compliance at multiple different financial services firms, and we're also listed in Michael Kitz's Advisor Tech directory and his FinTech map. He's a really big name in the financial services world. His newsletter has like 65,000 advisors, maybe more. And so he's just a big person in the space. To set expectations for the presentation, do we have something to promote at the end? Of course we do. We're all in business. We all have something to sell in some way. So I wanted to be very transparent about that. But the main purpose of the presentation is to give you a ton of value, and I really think we will. So as a byproduct, we want you to work with us because we're like, it's just a no-brainer. Like there's so much value here. I want to get so much more value out of it. So how can I learn more? Okay. And then next, we're actually going to get into things. So I tailored this a little bit, but if you think LinkedIn outreach doesn't work, sometimes I'll hear social media doesn't work or LinkedIn doesn't work. I want you to think about a couple of things. The first one is, how much LinkedIn outreach have you done? As in how many reps? And then what if LinkedIn outreach can work, but you just need to adjust your approach? So before going to the next slide, which you'll see why I have that one next, a lot of the time I'll have people, I'll be talking to different financial advisors, different financial reps, and they'll think that they've done a lot of LinkedIn outreach and they've sent like, I don't know, 300 invites. And which leads into, if you haven't sent at least 10,000, which it's also ironic how this actually overlaps. I was just doing the math and by happenstance, I came up with 10,000, and that is daily outreach on LinkedIn, which is 27 invites per day for 365 days, is just under 10,000. So if you haven't sent about 10,000 invites, you haven't done enough reps to be able to say it doesn't work. And I don't say this to be rude. Actually, I was planning on being a little bit more blunt during the presentation, but I don't say it to be rude. I just say it because I think, especially we as a society, we give up on things too early. Like, to put it into perspective, I don't like cold calling at all. I don't cold call. But if I had to, I would do it and I would find a way for it to work. That's the same with running ads. It's the same with any type of marketing. It's same with door knocking. You can do any type of outreach and have it work well, but your approach is what makes the difference. And so if something's not working for you, it's not that it doesn't work and it's not that it can't work for you. It's just you need to tweak something, which I think it should leave you hopeful rather than being like offended or anything. So why should you use LinkedIn? I've heard of some of these stats before, but I thought it was pretty cool to just put them all into one page. And obviously I can share the sources later. Most of them are just from a few sites. There's no short of qualified leads. You can find a lot of clients, and then it works for recruiting. So as you can see at the top, there's 234 million users in the United States on LinkedIn and another 26 million in Canada. So that's a lot of people. And then 79% of business-to-business marketers say LinkedIn is a good source for getting leads. 54% of LinkedIn users have high incomes over $100,000. So obviously a lot of advisors, when they're bringing on clients, want to make sure somebody actually has investable assets, and that's not just income, but that's a big factor. And then LinkedIn users have 2x the buying power. They're just typically a little bit more established in the working profession, and so it's a really good platform for that. And then it works with recruiting. Like, these are some of the stats that I really was surprised to see in a good way. More than 11,000 people apply for jobs on LinkedIn every minute. Like, that's crazy. 61 million people use LinkedIn to look for jobs every week. And then nearly 58% of people, I wasn't expecting this one either. 58% of people worldwide are looking for new jobs in 2025. Obviously, that also includes outside of the US and Canada, but like, that's over half of people looking for jobs. So when it comes to recruiting, like, people are looking for opportunities. They just want to find a good opportunity. So to how to use LinkedIn effectively, I think it's like the next, I don't know, 5 or 6 slides is really on this theme. And obviously that's the main purpose of the presentation. But what I would distill it down to is daily automated outreach, which we'll hit on later, supplemented with a few posts. So the thing is, sometimes people think you should just post content or you should just do direct outreach. Just posting content, I think I say this below. Yeah. Just posting content doesn't really do much on LinkedIn, unfortunately, because I love the platform. But if you do direct outreach with posting content, it helps, because the direct outreach allows you to actually talk to the people and control the narrative. So when they have objections, you can talk to them. And then when you post content, you're seen as more of an authority, and people respect you more. They're more familiar with you, so they trust you more. That's why it's important to do both of those. Like I mentioned earlier, LinkedIn's limits, this is not an exact number, but it's about 27 invites per day. They more have weekly limits than daily. The weekly is closer to like 175 or so, or 200 in that range. And then the daily message limit is around 100 messages per day. At a minimum, you want to make sure to send daily outreach, because that's how you have outreach, or that's how you have success with outreach on LinkedIn, is by doing it consistently. Like, I think back, it's funny having Brian and I met at the end of 2019. And I think back to when I first started doing outreach, which was in 2020, automated outreach on LinkedIn. And I was so bad at it at first. Actually, that's how we got in contact, was from, I think, an automated message. I could go back, but he could touch on that later if he remembers, or maybe he'll go check. But the moral of the story is, the more that you do something, the better you get at it. And so just make sure that you're doing it consistently. And then doing LinkedIn outreach, it's worth it to pay for Sales Navigator. I touch on why, I think, in the next slide, but that's something worth considering as well. And then I know I say this in caps, and it probably seems obnoxious, but your outreach is not about you. So many, especially financial advisors, I don't know what it is, but you'll try to lead with your firm and what you have to offer. Everybody else can say that. Like, words at the end of the day don't really mean anything. And so you want to make sure to show that you care about your prospects, be interested in talking to the prospects. And also, as a byproduct, when you're curious, they give you input that helps you talk to other prospects and know how to talk to those other prospects. I've learned how to effectively sell to financial advisors by getting a lot of objections, a lot of questions over time. So that's allowed me to tailor my approach. That is why it's so important to be so curious about your prospects and ask them questions. And then on the content side, I already touched on how if you post content without doing much outreach, you won't get much visibility. And speaking of visibility, if you don't get engagement, so likes and comments and shares, I think it's called a repost technically, but if you don't get that within the first hour, you'll get no visibility. I think it's really annoying that the LinkedIn algorithm does that, but you want to make sure that you have people. Actually, Andrew could probably touch on this at the end. And Andrew, actually, Andrew Zoll, I want to give kudos to, because Andrew, you do a really good job of commenting on other people's posts, like a really good job. And that's why your engagement has been picking up recently as well, as LinkedIn wants to see that community aspect. And then you can schedule content. This is something, I don't know if LinkedIn always had it, but within the past 2 or 3 years, I used to use a tool called Buffer. I just used the free version. It was a solid tool, but I didn't need to use it anymore because I could schedule posts directly within LinkedIn. Like even, for example, I think the furthest out post that I have, not that far out in the future, but I think like April 3rd, I have something already queued up. I know I have one for Saturday. This specific days doesn't matter, but you can schedule content, which is really helpful to just not have to remember to do it each day. Back to Sales Navigator. If you haven't tried it yet, usually you have a 1-month free trial, and then there's some people, I have a referral that I can give out. I think I only have a cap of 10 and I've already used up like 4. But if you're eligible for the one that I send, it's 2 months. So that's just something to keep in mind. Otherwise, then it's around $99 per month, depending if you pay monthly or yearly, it just changes. And then these are the key filters of why I like using Sales Navigator, because these ones, at least for the most part, are not available in regular LinkedIn. You can target based on, and there's a lot more filters as well. You can target based on years in current company, because the type of conversation you have with somebody, if they're only 1 year into a company versus 10 years, is a very different conversation. Geography, my favorite one is targeting within a certain mile radius of a zip code, which is really nice, because then if you want to meet with somebody in person when doing outreach, you could find people within like 25 miles and do that. Industry, so like for all of you, anybody in the financial services industry, you can exclude other people in the financial services industry, because for the most part, unless you're recruiting, you don't want to reach out to them. Years of experience in general, the more experience somebody has, more money they make. So, you want to throw that in there if you can. School, using alumni is helpful. I'm going to touch on it later, but you want to have as many points of relatability because that helps build trust. Connections, you want to have 2nd degree rather than 3rd degree, if at all possible, just because you have a mutual connection in common, at least one. It's not the end of the world, but if you could do that, use it. And then one of my favorite ones recently as well is the connections of. So you could put in a connection that you have in there. I don't want to say any names here, but I've been doing this recently. But I put in like, okay, let's use a name because he's actually on the call. If I wanted to, and I'm not, but I could take Brian Collins and I could put him in the connections of filter, and then I can see who he's also connected with, and then reach out to those people. And then also with change jobs, there's I know this is a cliche term by now, but like money in motion events. So people are transitioning their assets. They have different 401k. And so people who recently changed jobs are good people to reach out to as well. But that's why I use Sales Navigator. It just makes your outreach more personalized. This is a really important one that I didn't really start thinking about until, I don't know, about a year ago. When you reach out to people, it's tough to play catch up. And what I mean by that is, if they don't see you as credible and trustworthy and aren't impressed by you right off the bat, then you're constantly having to prove yourself on the back end. So that's why I say here, like, it might seem so simple that most people just overlook it, but please don't, because this, if you're doing outreach, will help a lot. So the main 2 things are, have a better, no, that's a very vague statement, but have a good LinkedIn profile, and then make sure you're asking quality questions that actually get somebody's attention. Because if you have a bad profile, somebody won't take you seriously. And then if you're not asking good questions, if you're just asking a very basic question, people are just gonna blow you off. They won't even think about it. Like, I wasn't planning on saying this one either, but one thing maybe to write down, because this has been a game changer for me in thinking about marketing, is anything in marketing, if everybody knows about it, it's not really effective anymore. The best marketers are always a little bit ahead of the curve. So they're testing new things, because that is what cuts through the clutter. Like, that's what marketing is at the end of the day. It's getting somebody's attention. And you don't get someone's attention when you sound like everybody else, and especially in today's world where there's a ton of clutter. As you can see here, the majority of buyers, 82%, which is a lot, will review your LinkedIn profile before accepting a meeting. And even before that, before actually accepting your invite. A good financial advisor to model off of his LinkedIn profile is Thomas Kopelman. I would recommend his profile. I think he does a really good job, especially his Twitter. I know he does a really good job with social media. He's also just a really good guy. And then also is a question. Some of you have probably read through this, but I'll just read through it if you want to jot this one down. Try out this question if you want, but this is something you could ask in your connection request message when reaching out to somebody. So let's say, hey, first name, let's make it Tom. Hey, Tom. I know I'm likely not the only financial advisor to reach out to you, so I'm going to try to take a different approach to set myself apart. Is there any financial topic that's been sitting in the back of your mind, but it's never felt like the right time to actually dig into it? I was playing around with questions either yesterday or the day before, and I've never seen anybody ask this question. Quite frankly, you could take this question, plug it into ChatGPT, and say, give me 15 other examples like this to find one that's genuine for you. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like the law of attraction, energy, what, but when you ask something that genuinely you like a lot and other people aren't using, it just gets some of the prospects to like, you'll actually get prospects to respond back and be like, I like that question a lot, or like, I like your unique approach. I've seen that in the past with my own outreach. And so it's worth it to spend a little bit more time up front to think of quality questions. Kind of along those same lines, you don't want to sound like every other advisor. So you want to lead with curiosity, which is what I was talking about earlier on in the presentation. The thing is, everybody has problems. We've all heard that, but no matter how wealthy somebody is or unwealthy somebody is, we all have problems and we all have money problems in some sort of way. And so as we want to get into it, here are a few ways to think about it. Is there a financial pain they're struggling with? Is there anything they're curious to learn about when it comes to their finances? Even if they do have an advisor, do they feel like their advisor genuinely cares about them? Probably should have put a question mark there. But the point is, if you can get a prospect to open up, that's like half the ball game. Because if somebody's closed off, you can't sell to them. And so the best way I have found to get somebody to open up is just being genuinely curious to figure it out. Like, if I'm reaching out to a financial advisor, I'm like, are you even still bringing on clients? Like if you're not bringing on clients, I don't know if our outreach will help. If you're not bringing on clients, maybe you're recruiting for a new advisor. We can help you there. But like if they're completely closed off, like for example, I think it was like 4 months ago, reach out to an advisor. He's like, I'm about to retire. And I'm like, congrats on that. But then like, I'm not going to keep trying to dig further and sell to someone who doesn't need what we have to offer. And as it says here, you don't need to sell hard when you show your prospects that you care. When people know that you care, they tend to open up to you. They tend to they're willing to share because they feel comfortable with you. And then I touched on it before, but leverage relatability as much as possible because it builds trust, and trust is everything, especially when meeting someone online because you're basically a complete stranger to them. And so that's why it's important that if you live in the same city, mention that to them. If you went to the same school, say that. If you worked at the same company, say that. You want to show that you and them are as similar as possible to build that trust. Just making sure I'm good on time. 20 minutes after. Cool. All good. As you can see here, I'm no compliance expert. Yes, I was securities licensed, still no compliance expert. So always double check with your compliance team if you want to be 100% sure on this. But I have a very firm belief that if you are doing prospecting the right way, you won't get in trouble with compliance. Because what gets you in trouble with compliance is when you're getting into specifics. And I actually kind of like I do like the school of thought of being vague with outreach. Because when you're vague, at least a little bit, you get people to just kind of wonder what's going on. Like, for example, one of my favorite follow-ups is to say somebody's first name with a question mark at the end. The reason why I like that is like, let's use the same name again. If I reach out to a guy named Tom and I say, Tom, and it's a question mark at the end, he's like, why are you saying just my first name with a question mark? Like, what do you want? Not necessarily what do you want. Not everybody perceives it as like burdensome, but they'll be curious to know why you said that. And so when you're doing LinkedIn outreach, if you're curious about them and then you say the specifics for the call, you should be all good with compliance. And so it always factor in what you're saying, making sure you're not getting into, like, as it says down here, product, services, fees while messaging. Because why would you discuss that while messaging anyways? Like, what's the benefit? Because then if a prospect has objections, even if you did get into that, then you're handling objections over a message when you could be handling it over a call, and handling objections over a call or meeting works much better anyways. So save the details for the meeting. The LinkedIn DMs are really just to gather information and figure out the best way to meet with them. You don't need to be having full on conversations over LinkedIn DMs, especially as an advisor where compliance is a factor. This is a big one. I don't know why, but still so many sales professionals will send these long blocks of text. Nobody wants to read that. And I mean, just think about it. Think about if you are sitting in front of your computer right now and you go open up your LinkedIn inbox, you see a message pop up and it's some huge long block of text from somebody who you don't know. You probably automatically think that this person's trying to sell something to you. And so you automatically just kind of close off and you get skeptical. So hopefully that was a decent exercise to get you to think about that. And so your prospects think that when you try to send these long messages, you might think it's helpful to send these long messages to be more informative and answer like questions that they might already be thinking. And that's proactive and smart, but it doesn't matter how well you're answering their questions if they don't care to learn more because they've already shut down. So when you're messaging on LinkedIn, you want to think of it more like texting and emailing. Texting is shorter, more casual. Emailing is longer and more professional. Like even just to give a little example, often actually, when I'm sending a message, like I won't put a period at the end. I'll use emojis. I'll use a laughing emoji. I'll say haha. I'll say LOL for laugh out loud. It just needs to sound more like texting. And then you want to keep things as casual as possible. But the exception is, especially as a conversation progresses, you want to mirror your prospects. So if they're sending short messages, tend to send shorter messages back. If they're sending long messages, send long messages back. Here's why. If they send short messages and you send something long, you seem salesy and desperate. If they are sending long messages and you send something short, you seem lazy and inconsiderate. So that's why you want to kind of match their energy. This is a really big one. We're going to get into this a little bit more later as well too, but I understand that following up takes more work and doing, especially manual follow-ups, they suck. But as it says here, sales is all about timing. It literally is, and it sucks. That's why I say, sadly, it's a bummer, I know. But like your prospects will work with you when they are ready, not when you want them to be ready. Again, I know it sucks. I know it sucks, but you got to have some way to keep them in your ecosystem. And the average person, and that's why the average person doesn't make much, doesn't go anywhere. The average person will reach out to their prospects once, maybe twice. Even that twice one is an exception for most. And so you want to make sure that you're continually touching base. Actually, I made a LinkedIn post. Anybody, if you want to go to my profile, I think it was 2 weeks ago, closed a customer who it had been almost 4 years of me following up with her before she finally started working with us. It was 3 days off from 4 years. And so I'm not saying that it's going to take 4 years of following up with people to get them to work with you, but sometimes it's a few months, and you want to make sure that they're there. Plus, the cool part about follow-ups is a lot of the time you forget about those people, and then you see the follow-ups do, then you go reread the conversation. You're like, wow, that's somebody they're actually really close to working with me. And so what follow-ups allow you to do is they allow you to not only have a pipeline of leads, but a pipeline of more qualified leads. Of course, some of those follow-ups at times, you'll follow up with them. They'll say, I'm still not ready. Or they'll say, you know, I changed my mind. I'm just not interested anymore. But that's just part of the game of sales. It's part of the game of prospecting. And so you want to make sure that you're following up with people. And as it says here at the bottom, if you aren't doing follow-ups, you're leaving most of, and when I say most, I'm saying most, and I'll actually break down the numbers, most of your money on the table, because only about 3% of prospects are ready to work with you when you first reach out to them. I think it was from a book called Marketing Made Simple by Alan Dibb. It's one of those where you actually can't see the bookshelf. One of the books back there. Out of 100% of people that you reach out to, like I said, only 3% are ready to work with you right now. And a total of only about 40% would ever work with you. So if 3% are ready to work with you right now, out of a total of 40, that means 37% of people would consider working with you, but not right now. And so when I say most, it's literally, okay, I'm going to start screwing up the math here, but the majority, let's say 90, 95%, because I don't know what 3 is of 40%. But let's say about 90% of people, or 92, around that range. Those people, they might work with you, but not right now. So you got to have some way to follow up with them. And I stay on this slide so long because it's just like, it is the differentiator. It is to really grow a business. You always want to be bringing new leads in, but you got to work the leads. And not enough people think about that. And I think part of the problem is like technology like that hasn't existed in the past. Everybody had to manually do follow-ups. And I promise you, I understand how annoying manual follow-ups are. Like, oh, that's actually some of the worst work that I have to do even today. Like current, because we're actually working, you'll see, we're working on a feature to automate them. But I'm still doing some manual follow-ups and they suck. It absolutely sucks. They're so boring. And then the next point is message prospects when they're active. Let me actually check the chat. I just saw somebody send a message real quick. Oh, Melanie, I see that. It's about the recording. I just want to make sure it wasn't like I wasn't saying anything wrong. But message prospects and Melanie, I'll get back to you. But reach out to prospects when they're active. And this is a big one for me. I took it out, the text, but I remember what I had in here previously. I used to message prospects intentionally late at night. It's the weirdest thing because I didn't want them to respond back soon. Because like obviously when you're in entrepreneurship, sometimes you're just like, I just don't want to prospect more. I want to get through the 30 people that I need to respond to, not have full-on conversations. It's just a time thing, especially at the end of the day, you're tired. But the problem with that is if you message people at the end of the day, they might not see your message and they likely won't until the next day or a couple days later. And they might be in the middle of something. So then they don't respond because it's not good timing for them. So because you were, in my context, I'll say selfish because I own up to being selfish at times. But like in your context, if you're just trying to be more efficient, by messaging prospects at night, sure, you will be catching up on your unread messages, but you'll be leaving money on the table. Well, another thing to write down, and this is something we're actually looking into, and I can give a tip during the Q&A session because I implemented something recently, but speed to lead. So when somebody, and if anybody wants to give me a reminder, I made a LinkedIn post on this one. Even Andrew could go find that LinkedIn post in the past if you want to, Andrew. But I actually updated our Calendly links, our scheduling form, to figure out if a prospect is willing to meet right now versus maybe they book a meeting out in 3 days. Because when they book the call is when it's relevant and fresh in their mind. So it's often the easiest time to sell them because even in 24 hours, somebody's state of mind is going to be completely different. So you want to get them now if you can. So as you're going to see here, one cool thing about actually our software, let's get into, yeah, this is the first one. There's actually a page in the analytics page that actually shows when your prospects more active. The downside is this data is not the same for you, as you're going to see here. This is one of our customers, Steven. See how the darkness of the blue is changing? It's because I reach out to a different audience than Steven reaches out to as an advisor. So that's the downside. It's not the same for everybody, but in general, there's more overlap. Like in general, weekends, people are not as active to respond. And what's cool too, this is just a screenshot, otherwise I'd show you, but in responses versus connections, these are quite different as well. Like if you were to go into my portal, people are actually much more likely to accept connections on the weekend, but they don't respond. So people are on LinkedIn on the weekend, but they don't want to be responded to DMs on the weekend. I thought that was a really interesting thing. But as you can see here, it's really helpful to actually have the data to know when your prospects are accepting invites and when they're responding, because then you can message them when they are active, which is convenient for them. And the easier you make it for them, the better it's going to help you because you're reducing their friction to move forward, whether that's book a call, become a customer, whatever. I just kind of sip that funny because I don't want to burn my mouth. All right. This is one that as the years go on, I get more and more, let's say, opinionated about this. Also, just double check we're good on time. By the way, I think we're going to leave about, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes for the Q&A. So I think we're right on pace. Automated outreach is far, far better than manual outreach for a wide variety of reasons. Like I'm actually going to jump down below. Manual is more time consuming. It's less effective because you don't have the data to learn from it. Like even I just showed you here, let's go to the previous page. You don't know actually what you're doing. You're doing a bunch of just outreach, but you can't track it. It's tough it's a pain in the ass to keep track of the follow-up. So there's just, don't even put them in the same ball game. If you're not doing any outreach, manual's good, but comparing manual to automated, like, no, it's not even close. And then it's also messy. Like A lot of advisors actually still use Excel to track leads. Hey, it's better than nothing. So like, I'm not going to hate on somebody for doing that in a rude way, but like, there's better ways to do it. Put them in the CRM, automate it. Like, there's different solutions. So you can either manually send a bunch of invites each month, about 800 to ideal prospects. You can manually send follow-ups to those people who actually accept your connection request. You can manually add about 200 people to your CRM to create a follow-up task. Then you can manually do those follow-ups when they're due. That comes out to roughly, this isn't an exact number, but it's pretty dang accurate, about 55 hours per month. So what is 55 hours per month? So each month worth of your time. That's just one thing that I want you to stop and think about if you're not using any automation with your outreach. So to get into things, and actually, you know what I might do is I might go back in the presentation. I wanted to rush through things to make sure that we weren't behind, but I actually went through things quicker than what I want. So we might actually leave more time either for the Q&A, or if you want me to go back to a previous slide, I'll do that. But let me just hit on something with Reply Assist, and then we could get through that, because I don't want to be on this stuff for too long. Again, I wanted to promote something, but I don't want it to be all promotion, okay? Using Reply Assist, so like our services, LinkedIn and email, automated outreach. You have the live LinkedIn inbox to respond to conversations. You can tag prospects as leads, keep them organized. You can integrate with your CRM, so you can automatically add contacts into the CRM instead of manually doing that. Analytics page, so you have data on when are the best times to prospect. Ability to import and export leads, that's important to some firms, not everybody though. And then tailored customer support, which I'm going to actually show. I don't know if it's in the next page, but it's one of the upcoming pages. Plus, we're soon launching. This is one of my favorite features. So, like, you guys know how much I hate follow-ups, but the ability to schedule follow-ups. Because then if a prospect says, yeah, I'm not interested right now, why don't you follow up with me in 3 months? You can literally just type out the message, set it, and forget it. So then in 3 months on that day, it sends a message, which is a game changer in sales. And I want to touch on this piece. This is another thing if you're considering looking into what we do. If you want the cheapest thing, we're not for you. But if you want people who have really great software, as well as can guide you along and answer a lot of questions, and I'll show you in the next screenshot. That's what I referenced like a couple minutes ago. Then we're a good solution for you. You know, I'm going to jump down to here. Think about how you feel as an advisor when you're reaching out to a prospect and they say they're doing their finances all themselves. They have it covered. They don't need your help. You're like, I just wish you could see what you don't see, right? I wish you could see your blind spots. That's what I see. Like, if any of you know me, we have some customers on this call. We have people I've actually met. I'm not the brightest person, but like I've just done so much LinkedIn prospecting. So odds are, unless you've done that much, I just know LinkedIn prospecting better than you do. And so we can help you so that you don't have to make the same mistakes as we did. It doesn't take you years to get good at prospecting. Okay. So I just want to touch on that one. And then just to show, instead of just say, how much we focus on quality customer support. This is one email to one customer. So this is Steven, who I'll show in the next example. Now, I'm not sending this every single day to all of our customers. That'd be extremely time consuming. But if it's what's needed, we'll go the extra mile and we'll make sure it's relevant. We talk on like 5 different topics all in this email. Same Steven, within a couple of months, I think it was a month and a half or 2 months of using Reply Assist, he closed his first customer. That resulted in, I don't know, about 4,000 plus income, because he got the 50K in initial assets. That always leads to more money, which is more income for him. Halstead, he brought in 10K to his firm just from one customer or from one client. He also got a recruit. And then that client also provided other referrals to 3 other business owners. So a lot more than $10,000 will come into his firm if he even converts one of those business owners. So I just want to touch on that. It's important to actually show proof of results. We've worked with customers, or our customers, should I say, work for firms like these ones, as well as other RIAs and other independent solo advisory firms. As you can see, those maybe work for some of those. And then as a real life example, this is where Brian, I'm going to bring in. Brian will just talk for a brief bit, but before Brian says anything, hi, Brian, one sec. Brian, actually, I'll let you expand on this one a bit, but how long ago did you start the securities guys?
Oh, shoot. What, about 8 years now?
I
9
was gonna
years?
say it's been a while, and geez, but
I think nine, actually. Yeah.
yeah. But as you can see, him and Jeff, they've helped their students pass over 7,500 different securities exams. They've been around for quite some time. They've worked with a lot of people, and then they're also credible enough that one of the Fortune 1000 financial services firms hired them to do live securities training for their entire field. of reps and agents. So I think that's awesome. I really do. I'll drop this link later. Brian can in the chat. But Brian, if you just want to give just a quick summary of what you've liked about using Reply Assist, that'd be helpful for other people to hear.
Yeah, I haven't been using Reply Assist for that long, but one of the things that's always bothered me about LinkedIn is sort of the stress of trying to figure out like who to message and when I need to message them. And I've tried different systems. This sort of lets me just do the fun part of talking to people. Because I'm just going and talking to the people that have replied, and I mean I'm setting up the what I want to send and things like that. But that takes an hour or so, and then I just sort of sit back for the next bit, and people who are interested message me, and in a couple months I expect to hear from people who are in the same system, and I don't need to be stressing about, oh, it's been 2 months since I reached out to this person. The system will reach out to them for me. And so it's been very helpful, and some of you may have actually, I may have talked to about this on LinkedIn from that system where it starts the
Mhm.
process, but then I get to finish it and do the fun part.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that, Brian. And also, one thing that you guys might be wondering is like with Brian's business, obviously his focus isn't like financial advising like a lot of yours is, or even recruiting. But that's the thing is like what I always like to say to people is the reason why we have the niche as a business of financial services is so we can provide better support. But anybody who's doing any type of outreach on LinkedIn, if they can find their ideal client, their ideal customer on LinkedIn, the software will work. And so just it honestly, the more creative you get with it, the more helpful it's going to be. Actually, as an example, I wasn't planning on mentioning, but one of our customers has actually used it to help grow his BNI group. Now, I am not part of a BNI group. I personally do not love networking, but I see a lot of people who get really good results part of networking groups. And so that's what he used as his outreach, and it worked really well. That wasn't something that he and I talked about. It was a thought that he had. So he created a campaign and Reply Assist and ran with it. So just wanted to mention that one. Yeah, send it more towards the end, the Q&A. I'll open things up for questions. Obviously, I went through this quicker. Money comes back, time doesn't. That's a quote that I heard a while back, and I like that.